Hello, welcome back to Whisky Wednesday. Another Wednesday, another whisky review with me, Joe. So today, I'm reviewing an American whisky called Tincup. Now this is a Colorado whisky. It's not bourbon, it's not rye, it's just called Colorado whisky. And it's made by the master distiller, Jess Graber, who is one of the best distillers of rye in the world. So that's quite a nice measure of that. Awesomely designed bottle. And it's Jess's take on a classic American whisky with a bourbon style profile, but with a high rye content in the mash bill. So it's 64% corn, 32% rye and 4% barley. So it has got a fairly high rye content. It's bottled at 42%, which gives it a little bit more depth, a little bit more complexity, and just a little bit more kick as well. Now, the name Tincup, it actually comes from the Colorado's first whiskey drinkers, which were the miners that came through Colorado looking for gold, and they drank their whiskey out of a tin cup. Oops, there we go, which is given to you on the bottle. So fantastic idea, throwback to how they used to drink whiskey in Colorado. So you can use that as a little drinking cup, you can use it as a measure, which I'll be doing in a bit because I've got a little bit of a surprise for you. So that's a 50ml measure, or just over 50ml. Also it's a throwback to the old Boilermaker drinks. Some of you might have heard of Boilermakers, the idea being you have a beer and a whiskey side by side, so you take a little bit of a sip of a beer, sip of a whiskey, and the idea is you'd match certain beers to certain whiskies. Bourbon, Colorado whiskey goes particularly well with a nice kind of malty beer with a little bit of a hoppiness to it. That kind of spice in the whiskey, that sweetness in the whiskey contrasts really well with those kind of malt-led, hoppy influenced beers. So let's give it a nose. It's matured for 4 to 5 years in new American oak barrels that have been charred. And as I say, it's got that high rye content. The bottle itself is made with these kind of like straight edges, and that is basically so if it was to roll down a hill, it would stop and it wouldn't roll very easily. So it would stop, bang, not going to roll that easily. So you're able to chase it down the hill, and it would sit on the kind of the slate and the rocks in Colorado. So yeah, Tincup, 42% American whiskey. Let's give it a nose. Okay, now straight away, the first note that jumps out to me is kind of caramelised apples. So it's got a fruitiness to it, but that kind of sugary caramelised note to it. There's a bit of cinnamon spice there as well. Getting the oak, vanilla, as you'd expect from new oak. But that's kind of led by kind of black pepper. So if you imagine kind of getting vanilla essence or custard, sprinkling loads of black pepper on it, so it's spicy as well. I'm getting spiced almonds, so it's quite nutty. And that kind of charred oak. So yeah, it does kind of, it smells like a bourbon whiskey, but it's got a lot more to it. It's drier, it's spicier, it's more nutty, and not quite as sweet. Right, let's give it a taste. Okay. The first one you get is it reminds me of bourbon. So it's a kind of sweet bourbon corn note, so sweet corn, popcorn, but then it's immediately followed by this kind of heavy spiciness. So I'm getting clove, dry oak, ginger. Let's give it another taste. On the second taste, real freshness, good acidity. So I'm getting orange sherbets, you know, they're kind of refreshers, orange refreshers, sherbety sweets. So kind of fizziness, freshness of that rye, it gives it a nice good kick. Almost like a cola bottle fizziness as well, so it kind of explodes, that kind of spiciness, that kind of effervescence on the palate. One more taste for the finish. Now, on the finish, I get quite a heavy orange oil characteristic. It's very dry on the finish as well, which is what I like about it. Hasn't got that sweet cloying taste that some bourbon whiskey has. It's a completely different entity. This is Colorado whiskey, that high rye content, that spiciness, that freshness. I think it's a fantastic whiskey. A solid 9 out of 10. It's only about 32, 33 pounds a bottle. So fantastic value. Obviously bottle design, the fact that you get a little cup with it, that throwback. I mean, there's a lot of work gone into the actual design of it. I think it's fantastic product. 9 out of 10. My little surprise for you, I'll leave that out, is that I'm going to make a old-fashioned from Tincup. Now, an old-fashioned is one of the classic cocktails. I will show you how to make it. First, I'll get a tumbler. Then you want some orange peel. Now, here's some I prepared earlier. Now, when you cut your orange peel, you want to basically cut as much pith off as you can. So you want the orange peel you should be able to see the kind of dots. You probably could get a little bit more peel off, but I mean, that's pretty thin. So you want to get as much of the pith off as you can, because the pith gives it a bitter taste. So get as much of the pith off so you can see that kind of, the circles on it. That's what you want it to look like. You want to get yourself a mixing glass or a Boston tin, a bar spoon, and a strainer. Now, there's a lot of arguments as to whether you use, what kind of sugar you use for your old-fashioned. I personally will always use proper sugar rather than gum. I think it's got a more natural taste, but some people argue if you use gum, as in like sugar syrup, you can always make sure your old-fashioned is the same. But I think real sugar has a more natural taste. So you start with, I go for a bar spoon and a half of sugar, because I don't like my old-fashions too sweet. So a bar spoon and a half, but obviously you can alter it to taste. There you go, that'll do. So put the sugar in the mixing glass. Then what I do is you need bitters. So the ingredients are whiskey, sugar, bitters and orange. I use 2 dashes. You can use whatever bitters you want. Angostura bitters are the most readily available. They're classic, good flavour. So you want 2 bitters. Now what I do is I put the bitters on the sugar first. 2 dashes of that. And you want to make a paste with the bitters and the sugar. So the idea is you need to dissolve the sugar as much as you can. So stir that around, kind of get that in. As much as you can, really mix that bitter and that sugar up. Okay. Right, then we add orange peel. So the idea is you stir the whiskey and the sugar up with the orange peel. These are quite small segments, so that's why I'm putting a lot in. So that's all going in there. You can press out some of the oil from the peel at the start if you want to. As I say, everyone makes old fashions differently. So you stir that around. Now it's time to add a little bit of whiskey. Now I'm using this measure because this is 50 ml. So, I'm going to fill this up to the top. That's probably about 60 ml, which is fine. So what I want to do is add this bit by bit to make sure that sugar is dissolved. So I'm going to pour a little bit in first and just start stirring that up. Now the beauty of old fashions is that you can make them from multiple spirits. So you can have a whiskey old fashioned, American whiskey old fashioned, so bourbon, Colorado, rye. You can have a smoky old fashioned if you use a smoky single malt Scotch whiskey. So I've made old fashions from Talisker before. You can make tequila old fashions, rum old fashions, and it's all about experimenting with different types of citrus, different types of bitters, and different types of sugar. So for a smoky old fashioned, using an Islay whiskey, I might use grapefruit and black walnut bitters. For a tequila old fashioned, I might use lemon, potentially, or lime, because lime goes particularly well with tequila. Now I'll add a little bit more. Try it. Now, what we want to do is add ice, because you want to chill the drink. So, some ice over here. Just a little bit first, and then keep stirring that. And I think ready to add more whiskey now. So pour about half of it in, and just stir that up. And you just keep stirring until that sugar's diluted. And until the whiskey's diluted down a little bit as well. So I'm going to pour the rest of that in. Back to one side, making a little bit of a mess. It doesn't matter. Right, so you stir that down. Until that orange oil has come through. And then you can taste as you go. So I've got a straw. And I think that is about ready to go. As I say, you could probably if you wanted to add more ice to dilute it down, you could, but I think that's personally diluted enough. One more taste. Yeah, that to me is perfect. Now, it's up to you whether you add ice to your glass, but it's often served over ice. So, get a strainer. Now, just in case there's any bits of sugar that hasn't dissolved, or there's any bits of orange that you don't want in your drink, use a little sieve. Pour it into your drink, pour it into your glass. That's for that. And then one more bit of orange peel, and you want to basically squeeze this over the glass so it gets a nice extra bit of orange layer. So when you drink it, you'll smell the orange, and then you can wipe it around the glass as well, and that goes in your drink. That is my Tincup old fashioned. Any questions about old fashions, let me know. Give me a shout. Let me know what your kind of favourite combination is of bitters and sugar or gum or whiskey. That is my Tincup old fashioned. Let's have a try. That's really good. Tincup makes awesome old fashions. As I say, 9 out of 10 for the Tincup. It makes really, really good old fashions. Goes well with beer, the old Boilermaker combination. Please let me know what you think. Leave me a comment, and I will see you next week, guys, for another whiskey review. Cheers, bye-bye.